Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Malts and Meeples. I'm Petter, and today, don't know why I got a notification on that Kickstarter. It's not one that I'm backing. But today we're going to be going through my top 100 games of all time, and we're getting close to the end. We're on 30 through 21, so join me and see which games make it into this section of the list. I have my old fashioned ready to go. Should grab my coaster. Good. Very nice. Orange bitters today. So, let's get started with game number 30. Game number 30, I think, actually started in my top 10 at one point in time and is one of my top dexterity games of, all time. I don't know where we're at right now on this. How did that happen? Oh, I know how that happened. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. I don't have a good way to reset this. Let's see. It's going to be Ice Cool. Ice Cool is a flicking dexterity game with a very fun theme to it. It's a penguin high school, and you're flicking your penguins around in order to, get fish. You're skipping class, you're trying to get fish, there's a hall monitor out there, they're trying to catch you, and it's just simply who can get it done first. I love just the kind of simplicity of this game and the fact that you can play with Ice Cool 1 and 2 up to 8 players. It's just one of those really good end of the night games, and it's one of those games where I've recommended it to other people. It always goes over well. For groups of adults, still works well because it's just silly fun. This is one, if you want strategy, you're out of luck. But if you just want something that's going to be fun, Ice Cool definitely fits that bill. And it is one of those dexterity games, though, that if you figure out what you're doing, you can get pretty good at it. But that's going to be my number 30. Then, at 29, we have Lands of Galzir. This one you can actually watch me play 10 sessions of on Malts and Meeples. This is a story game. It's not really a campaign game. It's more just a story experience as you go around to different locations. You roll skill checks, and you just experience a ton of different stories. You get to choose which quests you go on and kind of direct yourself. The one thing that that honestly would probably make this a top 10 game for me would be if they added in like more through line. Like if you could say, okay, I'm going to start in January and that kicks off, or I'm going to play this certain grand story arc that's 5 to 10 sessions long, depending on what it is. And those are just quests that you can find throughout the whole thing. But this game is just really slick, very simple to play. So one that I really enjoyed my time with, and one that I'm kind of getting that itch to go back and play again, just because it is kind of that cozy, relaxing story experience that you don't necessarily find in a ton of other games, because they try and be massive and epic, and this one's just, I don't know, it's just nicer. It's the best way to put it. Number 28, we're going to have Paper Dungeons. Paper Dungeons is up there for my top roll and write games. Another one that I've played here on Malts and Meeples. And actually, I played through the campaign of this one as well. This is a campaign roll and write game. But what I really like about this roll and write game is the fact that, sure, there's a campaign, but you're playing through trying to defeat monsters, deal with boss monsters, level up your adventuring party of heroes, craft weapons, get health potions, all sorts of things. And it's just, it's a good game with a different theme for a roll and write game. So many roll and writes fairly generic. This one has a whole lot, I feel like, going on for it in comparison, and offers a pretty wide variety of ways to kind of attack the game, all puns intended. Because you don't have to fight the big bad monsters. You can just make sure that you're strong enough to deal with the smaller minion monsters, rush through those, score your points in other ways, collect gems, treasures, and see what happens there. But yeah, this one's just fun, solo or multiplayer, and it's a good one for either because, again, a lot of roll and writes now, you roll, everybody acts. This one also is like that, so it's that limited downtime space for a game. Then we come to number 27 here. 27 is a game that had been higher on the list, then dropped, and now has made its way back up. And that's going to be Arkham Horror, the card game. This one I've gotten to play through this kind of core experience. I think, yeah, we got through it all. The last scenario didn't go super well for us, but it was fun, and I have picked up more of it, and I want to play more of this game. I enjoy it solo. I've played it once on Malts and Meeples, this channel, solo. But I think it's better with two. I like kind of that balance of being able to have one person who's maybe a little bit more combat focused, another person who's a little bit more clue focused, and building your strategies around that, sending people where it makes sense versus just having one investigator to take through everything. But Arkham Horror, the card game, living card game, whatever you want to call it, is really well done. And I think what impresses me the most about this game is how much variety it has just with cards. So the characters are different just with the cards, but the big thing is, for me, is that it's not just the characters that are different, it's the scenarios can be wildly different. Some require more fighting, some require more investigating. As you lay out your locations, that creates a city. You might be trying to track down cultists one time and capture them, or deal with them in some ways, versus another time you might be picking up other clues depending on what the story is talking about, or you might just be fending off monsters that are showing up, and that can change. Plus, then it uses a really nice card system where your cards can either be items, events, stuff like that you put out, as well as then boosts to your rolls. So it's a good push and pull of, do I want to hold this card so I can play it later, though I might mean that I don't actually succeed this check. How important is this check that I pass? Most of the time, very important. But sometimes you still just have to make that decision of, is it important enough? So we come on to number 26 here, and we've had a number of fairly big games or campaign story style games, 3 of them in a row, though Paper Dungeons isn't as big. But now we're going to go to a very small game, and this one is going to be Ohanami. Ohanami is a card drafting game that almost has a Racco like feel to it, if you're familiar with that classic game, where you're creating a row of numbers, and the numbers have to be in numerical order. As you draft, you are drafting cards to add to the top or the bottom of a column of numbers. And each player can have up to 3 of those going, and the cards that you're drafting, those are going to score you points. What I really enjoy with this one is that as a 4-player game, it's a pretty relaxing game. You just kind of take what you can and fit it into your columns, because you're always adding to the top or the bottom. You can't slot something in the middle. But a 2-player game, it can be pretty cutthroat, because I can see what you need, and when I draft from my hand, I'm going to pass it to you next turn. Or I might look and be like, okay, I need to get these 2 cards out of this hand because you'll want them as well. And so they're not going to make it back to me. There's just good, more depth of strategy that way versus a more relaxed game at 4 players. And either way, I think that it works really well. And it's an enjoyable game because of how it's an enjoyable game in that it doesn't feel repetitive with multiple plays, because you're always looking to kind of optimize your scoring strategy. The game is scored over 3 hands, so drafting 3 hands, building out your columns each time. And the first time you score only the blue cards. The second time you score the blue and green cards. Third time you score the blue, green, and gray cards, and that ends the game where you score the pink cards. And the pink cards can go crazy if you get a ton of them, but they're not necessarily the best points. So like 1 pink card's worth 1, 2 is worth 3 because it's 1 plus 2, and it starts to escalate fairly quickly. So you could go for that strategy, collect as many of those as you can, and hope that that's enough to keep you ahead. You're going to have other cards as well, but you also have to think about what color cards you're taking, because blue, yeah, it scores every round, but if you don't get in the first round, it scores less. So first round it scores 3 points, second round it scores 3 points, but green second round scores 4 points, so it's best to get green there. Gray third round scores 7 points. So it's just this nice little system of, if you can get the right colors in the right order, it works well, and it makes you have to think about your drafting. You might look and go, well, these 2 numbers are right next to each other. It's going to be the perfect one to take. But if it's a blue in round 3, is that really the perfect one to take? Because you're not going to get as many points. Then, at number 25, we actually have another roll and write game. This one kind of made the list last year. I forgot about it, and it was combined with the big board game version of this. I have them separate this time because I do think there's enough difference, though, and I prefer the roll and write version over the bigger version, mainly because roll and write version's easy to play solo. But that's going to be the Isle of Cats Explore and Draw. In this game, you're rescuing cats from an island, and you're doing it over a series of rounds. But you're activating cards in either, I think it's in columns of 3, and you're picking one of those columns to activate. And depending on what it is, it might just be cats that you can grab and put on your boat, or fill in on your boat. Or it might be some goals, some scoring objectives that, I mean, you need to get scoring objectives to win the game. You can do that just with cats, because if you have a big group of like orange cats, let's say, that's going to give you points, or a big group of family of purple cats. that gives you points. But these objectives are other ways to grab even more points that I think is just very fun. And I think the Explore and Draw game simplifies what is a fun game with the Isle of Cats, but it simplifies it so it's easier to just kind of pick up anytime. And I do think it makes the solo experience easier as well. You lose out a little bit on it, you don't have the drafting element of it, but the activating like the column of 3 cards is a lot of fun, and using some special powers to potentially activate more cards or to break the rule of saying they all have to be in the same column works really well. It's also a whole lot smaller. But that said, I have everything for the Isle of Cats. I do want to play that more as a bigger game. So, we're on to number 24 here. And disclaimer on number 24, it is not out yet. I have played the game multiple times at CMON Expo. And that's going to be one that I'm so excited for it to come out. I'm glad I have it pre-ordered. But Metal Gear Solid. This is just a slick board game of, well, either playing through the Metal Gear video game with boss battles, stealth, everything, or facing off against kind of one-off scenarios. And that's what I've done. I haven't done the campaign yet, but I've played the one-off scenarios, and the one-off scenarios are just really fun. You're sneaking around this base trying to collect intel, basically. You're trying to collect these folders. And depending on your player count, you need a certain number of them. And it just gets crazy sometimes because there's this great AI system for the bad guys. It's very easy to follow. I'll say, like, once you're into it, you understand what's going on. It's a breeze. There's a tiny bit of a learning curve for it, but generally the bad guys, they're just grunts. They're on patrol, and they just patrol around. Well, the second they spot you, the alarm is sounded, they're all going to rush towards you. And that's not a great thing because you don't have that much health, and you don't want to really necessarily start killing everybody because that doesn't help you. It's better to just be unseen. Or maybe you're being really smart about this. You're going to stay out of view, but there's a chance you could be seen if you're in one of the spots. But if you take one step further, it might work. Or 2 steps further, it might work. And you can push it. You can go faster. But that's a noisy action. So now there's a potential that the guards will have heard you. But they don't know you're there for sure. So the guards are going to send the closest guard to investigate the spot where they heard the noise. If they do that, then, well, in that case, then if they don't spot you because you've moved far enough away from where you made that noise, then you're good. They're just going to investigate that noise location and call it good. But if they spot you, now everybody's coming towards you. It's a good system, and it's a very simple system. That's one thing I really love about this game, is that as a player, I know what I can do. I have 4 action points to move, interact with objects, attack, lethally, non-lethally, maybe do some special abilities, activate my weapons, whatever it might be. I have 4 action points to do all of that. And it's all laid out there. It tells you precisely what everything is. It tells you if it's noisy or not. And yeah, it is such a good game. It's just such a fun experience of a game with a lot of tension to it. Like when the first time I played, I forget who I played, but I had enough defense and enough ways to manipulate the bad guys, or the bad guys' dice, so that when they spotted me at one point in time, I was just able to stand in a doorway, keep them focused on me because they knew where I was, only be attacked by one per turn, and just tank damage while the everybody else was off collecting the files that we needed. The second the last file was needed, or that was needed, was grabbed, I think it was immediately that turn. Like, I waited until it was grabbed, and then I had an ability where I had a cloaking. So I just activated the cloaking, got past the bad guys, and just booked it as fast as possible to the exit and made it. Then the next time, tried a kind of similar strategy, and we ran into a situation where enough guards spawned, and we ended up with like 5 guards all targeting a single character. And that was over quickly. But it's a really fun experience, and like for a lot of Steampunk games, they're kind of run and gun dice chuckers. That's not what this is. This, you do have to think about stealth. You don't have enough health to be like, oh yeah, I'll make it through this. So if you're interested in this, I'm not sure the pre-order's still open anymore, but it's coming to retail. Pre-orders being fulfilled next year, so 2024. Then, number 23. This one, I believe, was top 10 last year. Clank in Space. This includes Clank as well. I need to play Clank Catacombs and Clank Acquisitions Incorporated. And so Clank Legacy. And then I have the other Clank Legacy coming at some point in time. But I love this deck building system. Especially for Clank in Space. Clank in Space fixes like my one issue with base Clank, which is that base Clank, when somebody gets out of the dungeon, that sets a timer for the end of the game for 4 rounds, which means you can just kind of pop in there and grab something and get out, and everybody else to grab a treasure might have to go in further. If they're not set up for that, now you've basically just ended the game, because kind of with a little bit of a cheese way to do it. Clank in Space, there's no kind of timer that's set. It's just once you escape, you start with your treasure artifact, you start drawing out cubes. So Clank, if you're not familiar with it, it's a deck building game. It's a deck building game where you're building up your deck to move through either this dungeon or, in Clank in Space, a spaceship. You're looking for a treasure or an artifact, and you know precisely where they are, to grab that and get out. And you're doing that by playing out cards from your hand, which are going to give you movement, attack, and purchase power, basically. Purchase is to purchase more and better cards for your deck. So, as you're doing that, you're competing against the other players. You're moving on this physical board. In Clank in Space, you're trying to hack, or you are hacking these computer systems to be able to get into this vault area where Lord Erraticus has all his artifacts. Once you're in there, you can grab one, but all the while, if you are doing noisy actions, you're creating clank. So this kind of resource that builds up until Lord Erraticus activates. And when Lord Erraticus activates, all those cubes go into a bag, and they're shuffled up, kind of shaken up, and you're grabbing out those. And if your color's grabbed, it's doing damage to you. And if enough of them come out, well, you're dead. Lord Erraticus has caught you, and you're gone. But some of them are just Lord Erraticus's kind of general black cubes, which means that nothing happens. Or there's an expansion which can use them to activate some stuff. But it's just a really fun system, and it's good deck building with more to it. It's not just a pure deck building experience. You have to be strategic about where you're going as well. So that's going to be my number 23. Number 22, a game that just has come in. I have not played my copy of this, but played multiple times again at CMON Expo, and I'm excited to play mine. Marvel Zombies. This is just a blast. This is, when you think of CMON games, this is kind of what you think of. The Zombicide system, dudes on a map, tons of minis, fighting. Even like a Blood Rage, which I believe was earlier on my list, has some of that feel to it. Marvel Zombies is way more of a dice chucker, and you're playing as not the heroes in this one. Well, kind of as the heroes, but the heroes who have been turned into zombies. And you're trying to take out the shield agents, deal with the actual normal heroes who stand up or show up and eat bystanders. Mary Jane Watson, Aunt May, yeah, you might eat them. Okoye, J. Jonah Jameson, yeah, you might eat them. So that's just a fun experience, and each of the heroes plays a little bit differently. Like some of the heroes, I guess I'm trying to think the two that I played. I played Wasp, and her big thing was that she was ranged. She didn't have to be in there with the heroes or the shield agents to be able to attack. And then I think I played as the Hulk. The Hulk, I mean, he's not a ranged character. He's going to be in the middle of everything. But he was able to target and spread out damage a little bit differently. If I remember correctly, like he targets the area versus a character, and so can kind of spread damage out a little bit more or attack different ones first. But such a good time, and you're going to end up with so many shield agents on the board if you're not careful, and when they activate, it might be too late, but it's a good time, and I have so much for it. I might do an unboxing. I know other channels have done unboxings of this as well, but I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes of it, which I need to figure out how to condense down because that's way too much for my shelf space. But I also don't want to get rid of any of it because it's fairly plug and play, at least with like the heroes that you can play as, in the Abomination, or the zombie heroes you can play as, and then the Abominations, the heroes that you can fight against, to really create a lot of different experiences. And finally, at number 21, we have another dexterity game and another roll and write style game, and that's going to be Sonora. In Sonora, you are flicking discs with numbers on them, 1 through 5, for kind of the first part of a round. You flick those out, it lands in one of 4 different areas, and that tells you which areas of your kind of roll and write board you're going to be activating. So that part is a lot of fun. It's pretty random. If you're good at flicking them, you can hit the areas that you want. But I love the sheet aspect of this game, because as you fill in stuff, you're almost always triggering another bonus. When you're not, it feels like you're probably doing something less optimal than you should, because you fill in one spot, it probably connects to another spot, which allows you to fill in maybe even another spot, and it's just so full of combos that it makes for a really fun, really good gaming experience of something that feels familiar, but different. Just that flicking aspect and the sheet with how it works, I think it's just great. I would love to see an expansion, or yeah, an expansion basically for player sheets and one flicking sheet to come out for it, because it would work. It'd be easy enough to add that in, and I think, I mean, it would just be a different board to play on. It wouldn't even be truly an expansion for it that you would mix in with anything, but I think it could be fun to see some more. There we have it, though. There we have 30 through 21. Let's do a quick run through of these again, just as a reminder. At number 30, we have Ice Cool, a game of penguins ditching from Penguin High School to try and get some fish snacks before the hall monitor can catch them. This is just a silly, fun flicking game. Then we have Lands of Galzir, a relaxed story experience of a game. Very simple to play with a lot of fun story with it. At number 28, we have Paper Dungeons, a roll and write game of delving into a dungeon, leveling up your adventuring party, and just fighting monsters and fighting bosses. That's a really good time, with a lot of different ways you can try and tackle the problems that and the dice that come up. At number, this one's 27, we have Arkham Horror, the card game. This is an investigative, fight monsters, stop cultists sort of game, all done with cards. And not just a handful of cards, but cards out on the table that are going to create the location and the experience that you have, and story that leads in a lot of different directions for how you can experience everything that's going on in a campaign too. Then we have Ohanami. Ohanami comes in at number 26. This is a drafting game where you are collecting numbers. I mean, that's really what you're collecting, and putting them in columns in numerical order. But there's strategy to it, because you're only adding to the top and bottom of those columns. So you have to be smart with what you draft. And with the scoring, you have to be smart with the colors you draft so that you optimize your scoring. At number 25, we have the Isle of Cats Explore and Draw. This is a roll and write version of Isle of Cats, or flip and write version, roll and write style of game of Isle of Cats, where you're activating a row, a column of cats or endgame bonuses while rescuing these cats, filling up your boat to the best of your ability, trying to create families, groups of cats on there. A really good, fun experience that's easier to table than the big Isle of Cats game. At number 24, we have the one that isn't out yet, Metal Gear Solid. This is a cooperative and solo kind of stealth, combat, complete missions, the sort of game that works very well. It's just a lot of fun. Simple to pick up and play, which I really appreciated. We have Clank in Space, a deck building push your luck game as you are trying to get as deep into Lord Erraticus' spaceship using the cards that have movement and purchase power and attack power on them to grab an artifact and get back out before Lord Erraticus catches you, which is done through this bag mechanic, but all the while worrying about if you're making too much noise, too much clank, that's going to cause issues for you. At number 22, we have Marvel Zombies, the Marvel version of Zombicide. And this one has you playing either as heroes, dealing with the Marvel zombie infestation of other heroes who have been turned into zombies, or as the base game has you doing, playing as those zombies, trying to complete different objectives, complete scenarios, and win. And it's just a fun dice chucking, beer and pretzels kind of style of game where it's fun to sit around and just enjoy chucking a handful of dice and seeing what happens. And then finally at number 21 we have Sonora, a flick and write, roll and write style game where you're flicking discs and that determines which area of your roll and write board you're going to be filling in. This game is for the people who love figuring out all those combos and how they're going to work, because there are so many in this game, which, I mean, I'm a fan of that. So, just a good time for me. So, with that, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this. Let me know down in the comment section below which one of these games is your favorite, or maybe one that you haven't had a chance to try yet, but now, because of my excitement for it, hopefully, and I am excited about all these games. I'm kind of ready to play any of them again right now. Let me know which one you would want to try. If you want to know when I go live, the best way to do that is subscribe and click that notification bell. But if you're not too sure on that quite yet, maybe you don't want to subscribe to another channel. I understand how that goes. I have way too many I'm subscribed to, and not enough time to watch them all. And you just want to remember, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Central, next 2 weeks are going to be wrapping up my top 100 games of all time. And then on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central, I generally play campaign-style games. I'm not sure if it's going to be before Christmas or right at the beginning of the New Year's that I'm going to be starting playing through the Rogue Angels prototype, which I'm super excited for. That is a game that I have been talking about for a long time, successfully crowdfunded now, so I cannot wait to get the prototype to the table. And then on Mondays at 9 p.m. Central, most Mondays I should say, I play some smaller solo game. This past week I played Ganz Schön Clever a few times. I might play Doppelt So Clever next week. We'll have to see. But like I said, the easiest way to know when I go live is to subscribe and click that notification bell. If you want to check out other content that I do, you can check down below in the description for the link for nerdologist.com. There I write about board games, other nerdy things, anime, movies, superheroes, whatever it might be, whatever catches my fancy that day. So you can check that out. I also have a podcast called 10 Minute Marvel. If you're into Marvel comics, movies, shows as much as I am, it's a great spot to check out as well. Comes out every Tuesday, and it's no longer 10 minutes. It used to be 10 minutes, but I have a co-host now. It's a whole lot longer. We just haven't rebranded, because that kind of messes some stuff up. But with that, again, thank you so much for watching, and bottoms up.